Now, my name is Craig Rucker. I serve as the Executive Director of the Washington, D.C. based group Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, or CFACT. And on behalf of our organization, we would like to thank the Heartland Institute for hosting this marvelous gathering here, one which we're very proud to be a co-sponsor of. Today's topic is going to be on battling Russia and America's big green machine. Now, some of you may have heard of big business, or maybe you've heard of big government, but how many of you have been familiarized with big green? Right? It's not as common, right? Well, that's why you need to be here, because this panel is going to expose and roll back all what's behind the big green environmental machine. It's going to be big, really big, the biggest conference panel you're going to hear today. And part of what makes it so big is our experts that are to my right here, your left. Mark Mathis from the Energy Clear Alliance. We got, is that right? Did I say that right? Clear Energy Alliance, I'm sorry. Bonner Cohen, who works with us at CFACT, as well as the National Center for Public Policy Research, and Mark Morano from CFACT's Climate Depot website. Before we begin, I want to make a few intro remarks here. One of the things, if you're going to find out about what motivates a person, an organization, it could be even a governmental entity, is to, as the old adage goes, follow the money. Correct? You follow the money, you get an idea of what maybe is fueling why somebody is doing something one way or the other. Our friends on the left, of course, do this themselves. How many people in this room have maybe been accused of being a corporate stooge or a front for industry or being in the pocket of big business, right? They know that. In fact, they got whole websites designed to follow that. They got the Exxon Secrets, Source Watch, all sorts of different ways that they tried to get underneath and find out what's motivating the right. This old idea of corporate money to me is kind of amusing. I can speak for CFACT. I wish we got corporate money. We get about 4% or less from industry. When you compare that to groups like the World Wildlife Fund, which gets 10% or $100 million from big business, we got some work to do to catch up with that. In fact, I'd like to learn their secrets for raising big dollars from big business, because we're not opposed to it, but the other groups have obviously got an edge over us on that. Nevertheless, this myth persists that the right is backed by big business, and the media, the fake news media, is happy to push this along. Why do they do this? Well, to some degree, I would say it's the old Roman maxim: if you can't kill the message, kill the messenger, right? I would also find in this whole debate something else rather intriguing, and that's the idea of what psychologists would call projectionism. That is, accusing others of what you yourself are doing, or attacking others in a hypocritical way. It'd be like Bill and Hillary attacking Trump and Stormy Daniels or something like that, right? This whole idea that they should be outraged at such a thing. If you were to look at the top environmental groups, they have a combined budgets of well over $1 billion. And much of this money comes from, when you peel it back, big billionaires. People like Michael Bloomberg, Tom Steyer, and others, and we will discuss that today. They get it from foundations. There was a report in 2014, a Senate report called The Chain of Environmental Command: How a Club of Billionaires and Their Foundations Control the Environmental Movement. According to this report, the top 10 environmental grant makers, which include groups like the Rockefeller Fund, Sea Change Foundation, Packard, and others, gave a combined $577 million to environmental groups in recent years. That's a lot of money. And of course, the left also gets a lot of money from government. According to that same report, under Obama, some 27 million taxpayer dollars were doled out to environmental groups during his last term. But the part of the projectionism that to me is most hypocritical is the fact that these very people who accuse you of being in the pocket of corporate industry and your corporate stooges are themselves receiving millions from big business and oil companies and fossil fuels in particular. Shell Oil, for example, gave $1.2 million to the Nature Conservancy. The World Wildlife Fund, as I said, gets $100 million from big business. Exxon gave millions to the Audubon Society. British Petroleum has given millions to the World Resources Institute, Audubon, and $10 million to the Nature Conservancy. And then there's that fossil fuel giant Chesapeake Energy, which gave $20 million, thereabouts, to the Sierra Club over 2 years. Fossil fuel interests have funded the environmentalists, yet we get attacked for it. Why do companies give money to these groups that are attacking them? Seems kind of counterintuitive. Well, one reason may well be that they're feeding the lion, hoping they'll be eaten last. One might also say it's extortion money, much like people gave to the mafia, hoping that they'll be passed over and the mafia won't hassle them. Of course, it's worse than giving money to the mafia because, of course, these groups give millions to the Greens, which is like the mafia, but they still get attacked. So it's not a particularly good investment. But nevertheless, $1 million here, $1 million there, and as the old saying goes, soon you're talking about real money. These are the topics and others that our panelists are going to be discussing. They're going to give what I call the short mini-skirt versions of these, about 15 minutes long. They'll be big enough to cover the issue, yet short enough to hopefully be interesting. Our first speaker is going to be Bonner Cohen. He's going to be talking about another source of funding that the Greens get from Russia and China. Bonner is a senior policy analyst with, as I said, with CFACT and the National Center for Public Policy Research. He's also a senior advisor for the Heartland Institute. He's written articles that have appeared widely in publications ranging from the Wall Street Journal and Forbes to Investors Business Daily, been on CNN, Fox, and many other shows in the past. And he will be discussing particularly Russian and Chinese interference in the U.S. energy sector, the real collusion, or the real Russian collusion. Following him will be Mark Mathis, who is a former news reporter and anchor. He has written a book called Feeding the Media Beast, and he has also produced 2 films, one called Spoiled in 2011 and another one called Fractured in 2016. If you haven't seen them, they're excellent films. They are on the issue of energy. And he currently serves as president of the Clear Energy Alliance, and he will be talking about foundation money, news and media manipulation, and also as this pertains to social media. Our final speaker will be Mark Morano. He currently serves as the publisher of CFACT's award-winning ClimateDepotNews.com, as Rush Limbaugh likes to call him, his favorite source of global warming information other than himself. Mark, of course, was in a movie called Climate Hustle that came out a couple of years ago in 2016. That movie was #1 for One Day in America. Jimmy Kimmel attacked it. It actually beat My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I think, and one other film was out at that time. He also wrote a best-selling book this year called The Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change. And he'll be looking at those big players in the green movement like Tom Steyer, Michael Bloomberg, and others, and giving you the skinny on them. Before they begin, however, we have a short video that I think Mark produced, right? That we're going to take a quick look at, and then you can come up, Bonner.
Are American environmental groups partnering with Vladimir Putin to undermine America's energy security? Could be. 2 Republican congressmen recently wrote a letter to the U.S. Treasury Secretary outlining their concerns. Representatives Lamar Smith and Randy Weber believe Putin's Russia has been funneling tens of millions of dollars to anti-energy activist groups. According to the congressman, these groups spread propaganda about the safety of hydraulic fracturing and actively work to shut down pipelines, among other mischief. And it's not just Republican congressmen sounding the alarm, and this information is not new. During a private speech in 2014, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said, "We were even up against phony environmental groups funded by the Russians to stand against an effort, that pipeline, that fracking, and a lot of money supporting that message was coming from Russia." A Senate report released in July of that same year detailed how the environmental extremist movement takes its marching orders from an exclusive group of wealthy people that wants to obstruct oil, gas, and coal production. The 92-page report explained how these groups covertly move money around through offshore shell companies and private foundations. They do this, of course, to hide where the cash is coming from. Also in 2014, Anders Rasmussen, the former Secretary General of NATO, said in a speech, "I have met allies who can report that Russia, as part of their sophisticated information and disinformation operations, engaged with environmental organizations working against shale gas to maintain European dependence on imported Russian gas." And now, a 29-year veteran of the CIA says environmental groups are without a doubt agents of influence to Moscow through a networking system of shell companies and foundations. Kenneth Stiles told the Daily Signal, "Geopolitically, this is Putin's Moscow attempting to thwart America's efforts to gain energy independence and to help our allies get from underneath Putin's energy boot." Stiles, who is now at Virginia Tech University, is focusing his attention on exposing 3 Virginia environmental groups that are trying to block the Atlantic coast and Mountain Valley natural gas pipelines. The former CIA agent says Putin's money passes through a shell company in Bermuda and a foundation in San Francisco before being sent to a group called Virginia Organizing. That group then delivers the Russian money to groups called Preserve Montgomery County and Friends of Nelson County. Stiles told the Daily Caller these grassroots organizations are doing Putin's bidding. They are colluding with Moscow, the Russian oligarchs, and Putin against America's interest and our freedom. What do you think? How hard is it to believe that the Russians are teaming up with American anti-energy activist groups to achieve their common goals? Power on, America.